What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the youtube.com/pelfrey channel, which I document my Red Sea Reefer 250. And this is something that had to happen. It's time to glove up, get my hands in the tank, and pull out some of the dead corals that have just been hanging out in the Red Sea Reefer for a little too long. This is the first piece. Was a rather large bird's nest that has been 50-50 for quite some time. Coralline algae actually started taking over, and then it began to just bleach out completely, and gave it some time to see if it would recover, and it never did. I do also have another bird's nest on the rock, and that thing is a pain in the butt to get off, as you will see in this video. Number one, bird's nests are sharp, and I definitely do not want to get punctured by any coral, but it definitely grew into the rock just great. But overall, I had to pull out quite a few pieces, and basically I just left them in the tank to see if they would ever bounce back. They never did, so it's time to get rid of them, kind of thin out the herd. The most important question to ask is, why is this happening? And unfortunately, I have no idea. It seems like things were on the up and up. All my parameters have been stable. I have decided to dose nitrates and phosphates to get those levels up in my tank. But unfortunately, I have no idea what is going on now. As far as a bird's nest is concerned, it really likes a tank or it doesn't like a tank. It's just, from my experience and my research, just one of them corals that it either likes it or it doesn't. Now, as far as the softies are concerned in the tank, they're all doing fine. I've not had any issues with those. And I do still have a couple SPS frags in the tank. I'm gonna let those do their thing, grow out or fade away before I pull the trigger on any more SPS corals. And the number one thing that I have to get dialed in is stability. You're gonna hear that everywhere. I have plenty of flow on this tank. I'm running two Maxspect Gyre 230s. I have plenty of light. I'm running the Aquatic Life T5 fixture with two Kessil A160s. So I'm definitely not struggling in the lighting or flow area by any means. It is quite depressing to pull the corals out of the tank, to watch corals die, not only because it's money invested in something, but you know, these are corals, and you definitely always kind of expect to put a coral in your tank and see it thrive. But for whatever reason, it's just a learning process, and I'm gonna get there. I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna get this figured out, and I will have SPS corals now. Back to the bird's nest. I probably won't try any more bird's nests. I've tried multiple bird's nests, pink, multiple different variations of the greens. I'm probably just gonna be done with those. I think it's worth mentioning for reference that recently I did switch from the Tropic Moran balling method, which is 3 parts, to the ESV Bionic 2-part system. I do have the magnesium as well, but I am only dosing alkalinity and calcium from the Coral Box Wi-Fi doser, and I'm only dosing like 4 mils a day, so it's nothing significant. And definitely with the significant loss of SPS corals, the dosage is probably right about 4 milliliters. I don't really need to go much higher than that, just because the consumption isn't there. So again, this is going to fall in line with test your parameters. Make sure that you are keeping track of your parameters. There's multiple apps you can use. If you have Apex, you need to use the Fusion dashboard. It will convert, you know, phosphorus. It'll have the Red Sea colors on there, so it's very handy to have. You can also use, there's a website called Aquatic Log. You can use that. So there's all types of platforms that you can use for keeping track of your parameters. And if you want, you can go old school and just keep it on a piece of paper or in an Excel sheet. Taking a better look at the corals that I pulled out of the tank, you can see that they are all gone. Didn't really see any benefits of leaving them in the tank whatsoever, so just go ahead and yank them out. Luckily, I used super glue, so they were very easy to pop off of the rocks. No issues there. There's no life left on any of these corals. They're absolutely 100% white, and you know, it is what it is. And like I said, I'm going to continue moving forward, and I'm not going to give up. I'm going to get this tank figured out and dialed in and get it thriving. When that will be, I'm not really sure, but I do appreciate all the help I've got from you all so far. I was up in the air on what I'm supposed to do with these dead coral frags. Do you leave them in the tank? You know, I don't know. I took them out, and I decided that there was only one way to really handle these coral frags. Earlier in the video, I'm talking about testing. Test. And I'm not one to, I'm not afraid to admit my faults. I assumed that my refractometer was calibrated. Unfortunately, I am believing now that one of the problems with my tank is that the salinity dropped to 1.020. Not a good thing. Obviously, it fell that way over a period of time, and I need to increase it over a period of time. But I have some calibration solution, and this does not have an expiration date on it, so I'm just going to roll with it. You know, you're supposed to put this on your refractometer and calibrate it to 35, I think it's PPT, and kind of go from there. And then I do have some zero calibration fluid and some 1.025 calibration fluid back whenever I had the Milwaukee refractometer. So I'm basically going to calibrate it with the 35 point solution and then test it with the 1.025 solution. So, you know, teach what you preach, preach what you teach, however that saying goes, but I definitely will not let this mistake happen again. I should have checked calibration on this long ago. I don't do very many water changes, so I'll be honest with you, I tend to slack whenever it comes to testing salinity. Never again. I'm going to definitely keep this thing calibrated. I'm going to buy some more calibration fluid to make sure that it is accurate, and I may even look at getting the Milwaukee again just because it was pretty easy to use and I felt like it was pretty accurate, but at the time I didn't really feel like I needed it, so I got rid of it. To alleviate the situation, I mixed up about a gallon of water to 1.030, so I'm making it pretty hot, and I'm basically going to take a cup of it, top off the tank with it to increase the salinity back to 1.024, 25, 26, which 26 is my happy medium range. Now, how did we get in this state? The only logical explanation that I have is whenever I added the skimmer back to the system, of course the skimmer requires water. It took enough water to offset the salinity. Now I also did remove some more pond matrix, about a cup or so pond matrix, and that of course does take up some water volume. So all in all, I think that these two things kind of triggered what was going on, and it's my fault, but I'm not afraid to admit it, and hopefully somebody can learn from it and make sure that your equipment is calibrated. My fault 100%. Since I've been dosing nitrates and phosphates into the tank, the Nyos skimmer has skimmed the best that it's ever skimmed. The skimmate is definitely stinky, and it is definitely very, very dark. The Rain 2 is doing phenomenal. So at this point, I don't regret dosing nitrates and phosphates. Again, I'm working on a video on how I chose to dose nitrates, but basically it's worked out for me, and I've tested every other day or so and dosed as needed. So for the past 3 or 4 days, I have not dosed any nitrates because they're actually holding pretty steady. They may be a little higher than I'd like, but that's better than zero in my opinion. I also picked up one of the ATI ICP test kits. I'm going to send this off and get a baseline reading. I'm really not going to try to stabilize my tank too much. I just want to get a baseline reading, and then I'll probably do another one of these in a couple months. Something that I've wanted to do for quite some time. I just decided, since my tank's been declining, that I would go ahead and take care of it now. Make sure there's no aluminums, no metals or anything in the tank, but I'm pretty sure that my issue has been salinity and low nutrients. Let's take a look at some of the remaining hard corals that I have in the tank. This is a green slimer that had done well for quite some time, and as you can see, it is now struggling. There are pieces of it that are still good and okay, but in the long run, I'm not really sure what's going to happen to it. The red money cap was doing fine, and actually it had probably doubled, maybe tripled or quadrupled in size, and you can see that it is now turning white. So it is definitely a battle in the Red Sea Reefer 250. As far as the Recordias are concerned, these things are thriving. I have 2 different rocks with them on there, and they have never been extended like this before. So, you know, I don't know, it's a mystery to me, but I do know that the soft corals do like dirtier tanks. Now, as far as the salinity is concerned, I don't know the answer to that, but the hammers in the background, as we'll change and shift focus here in a moment, have done well and are looking really good. So I have no complaints there whatsoever. Now ultimately I do want this to be an SPS dominated tank, and that is what my goal is. So the only thing I can do is keep trying and figure out what's going on, document it, and hopefully you can learn from my mistakes, because I am definitely not a pro. Since I'm having to top off the tank with my own salt water, as I looked into the sump, I seen some algae in there, which means that the algae scrubber is overgrown. And I am telling you, since I started dosing nitrates and phosphates in this tank, just like the skimmer, the Rain 2 has taken completely off, and I love it. I got no complaints whatsoever. And some people say, well, why dose nitrates if you have an algae scrubber? Just pull the algae scrubber off the tank. There's more than one way to skin a cat, folks, and this is what I choose. So what are the plans going forward with corals? I'm gonna actually hold off on corals for right now. I may pick up a couple of more fish, maybe some soft corals, let the tank stabilize, get the ICP test sent out, figure out if there's anything that I really need to adjust, and then dive back into some SPS corals again. But like I said, I am definitely not done with saying definitely number 1 in this video, but I am not done with SPS corals. Just like that, folks, this update is complete. As always, I do appreciate you following along on this journey, and hopefully you've learned something, because I sure have. Stay tuned for the next week's update. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Will Pelfrey crash his tank? Stay tuned for next week.